How sensible would it be to own and run a bookstore? Hello, welcome to my channel. Another bibliophile reads. Today I am doing a tag, the If I Owned a Bookstore tag, which was created by Robert G., reader of books. I was tagged by Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, and at least one other person. I'm drawing a blank on who that other person was, but thanks nonetheless for tagging me. I do like receiving tags, even if I don't always get around to doing them. And this tag is fairly simple. There are 5 prompts, and it asks a question. What would it be like if you owned a bookstore? Now, I am a person who in my 20s and early 30s, I actually worked at a bookstore, or should I say 2 bookstores. I did not own the bookstores. I was only an employee. The first was Crown Books. If you paid full price, you didn't buy it at Crown. I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to remember that advertisement with Bobby Haft. Bobby Haft was the owner and spokesman for Crown Books. It was a discount bookstore, and true to its word, if you went and bought a book at Crown Books, you did not pay full cover price, ever. There were a lot of Crown Books in the Washington, D.C. area, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. They even spread out to, I believe, Chicago, Texas, and California. I never got to see a Crown Books outside the Washington, D.C. metro area. When I started working, I was just a part-time cashier in my senior year at the University of Maryland. It was the Christmas season, and I volunteered to be a part-time employee. And they kept me on because finishing up my senior year was easy to work part-time. And then once I finished college, I started working full-time at Crown Books, first as a cashier and then as an assistant manager. I eventually jumped ship to Borders Books. Borders Books was a much better bookstore, even though you wound up paying full price most of the time. They did have some discounts on hardcover books. But Borders Books put Crown Books out of business. Maybe. Crown Books was having difficulties anyway, and maybe Borders was just the final nail in that coffin that sent it into bankruptcy and it closed. And then I eventually just got tired of working at Borders Books, which eventually became Borders Books and Music, because working at a bookstore is not really a great career opportunity. Even though at one time I almost got hired as a book buyer and would have had to move up to Michigan, where what was a town in Michigan? I'm drawing a blank on the Michigan town that they lived in. It was where they had the University of Michigan. It will probably hit me halfway through this video. But I never went that far in the bookstores, even though I worked there total like 7 years of my life working at a bookstore. So I know a little bit about owning a bookstore. And there's a lot of issues that I would ask about owning a bookstore that's not asked in these tags. It's like, how do you deal with employees? Employee insurance, bad employees, employees stealing, that sort of thing is not covered. It also not covered is that owning a bookstore really isn't a very sound financial investment. Bookstores did not make a lot of money, especially the smaller bookstores. Now, I did work for Crown Books, which was a chain, and at the time, Borders Books was a very popular and well-run chain. It made gobs of money for a number of years, and it changed. What happened to Borders Books was that it was run by 2 brothers, Tom and Louis Borders, and they sold out to Kmart. I still remember the day that they had an employee meeting, and they say, "We are now owned by Kmart." And that, folks, really was the end of Borders Books. But let me go ahead and do this tag. I don't want to own a bookstore because I have worked in bookstores, and working at a bookstore is a job, and people tend not to like their jobs. And I became sort of disenchanted with books, working at a bookstore, because I saw all the really boring and dull books that went out the door like hotcakes. So I'm going to change up this tag just a little. I'm not going to talk about if I owned a bookstore. What I'm going to talk about is if I owned an underground bookstore. And this is a scenario that is not true now, but maybe in the future, the way the United States is going, that the people in charge don't like books, and they may want all bookstores closed. And maybe, just maybe, if I have enough gumption and I have enough energy, I would open an underground bookstore that provided illegal books to customers or readers who wanted them. Take that in mind. The questions. What are the hours of operation? Well, this is an underground bookstore. It does not have any official building hour, working hours, or opening hours. You would knock on the door. You would give the secret password. Let's just say for now the secret password is swordfish. I would probably have to think of something better. But you gave the password, and if I was awake, I would let you in to browse and look for books. Prompt number 2. Is there ambient music? What kind? Well, if I were home alone listening to music, I would be listening to classical music. You know, the Bachs, the Beethovens, the Mozarts, maybe some Rachmaninoff, maybe some Mahler, maybe some Arvo Pärt. Those kind of music I would have. Maybe every now and then I'd listen to some jazz, but who knows? But generally speaking, it would be the type of music you would hear if I were at home listening, because I would not really be working in this bookstore. I'd be guarding it for the people who wanted to come in. Prompt number 3. Is there a coffee bar? Do you serve alcohol? There would be no official coffee bar. But you know, I might have some bottles of rum, some bourbon, some vodka, some tequila. And if you were a regular coming in to this underground bookstore, I might sneak you a tot of something adult. Keep your mood up. That sort of thing. Prompt number 4. Are patrons encouraged to linger? Are there comfortable chairs? What kind of lighting? Are there tables? Are there areas for group gatherings? Well, this would be essentially run out of a home or a business that was never officially opened, so there may be tables and chairs for people to linger. And you know something? I just may want to talk to these people who are coming to my underground bookstore, because everyone who came into this bookstore would be devoted to reading and to books. Number 5, is there live entertainment? Poetry readings, author reading from their current works, lectures in literature. Maybe people would gather and talk about the books they've been reading underground, not official. There would be no claimants saying this author is coming to visit. But if I could get authors to come and talk about their books, the struggle to keep books alive and vibrant and available in a totalitarian regime, I would have them for sure. Prompt number 6. Where is your underground bookstore located? In the busy heart of a large city? In a neighborhood of a large city? In a suburban strip mall? In a small town? In a rural area? Honestly, if I'm running an underground bookstore, it's got to be rather inconspicuous. My imagining was I would rent a place, maybe a basement under a pub. So people are walking by on your city street. It kind of looks like they're going to the pub, but they take a left turn and go down a set of stairs into the basement, and there is the underground bookstore. That's how I imagine it. I don't think it'd work in the suburbs or a rural area, because people are snoopy. If people drove by and saw these cars stopping at a house, they wondered, what's going on in that house? Let's call the cops. You don't want that when you're running an underground bookstore. Prompt number 7. How does your bookstore look from the outside? Sleek and modern, dark and brooding? I think I've kind of said that. It's the area under a pub. Very inconspicuous, I would hope. Prompt number 8. What's your specialty? Used books. New and used. Only fiction, only nonfiction. Fiction and nonfiction. Does your bookstore specialize in a particular genre? No, this underground bookstore would not be particular to any genre. It would carry any and all types of books that were made available to me. Also, because there's no real place to put this in the prompt, I would probably not charge a lot of money for my books. You could come in and borrow books. You could trade books, because this is an underground bookstore, providing books to people in an authoritarian regime that does not like people to read. So if you wanted to read a book and could not afford it, I would just let you take that book home. And then you finish that book and you bring the book back to the bookstore and let another person read it. Now, occasionally, depending on how things are going, and if I'm relatively as affluent as I am now, or not as affluent, I might ask for some donations to keep the bookstore running. But I would not draw a salary because I'm retired. I'm assuming that my retirement income is relatively intact, and I don't need a job. I'm running this underground bookstore because I love books, and I want people to be able to read whatever kind of book they want to, with anyone snooping or making judgment. Just make these books available to anyone who wants them. Of course, you will need to know the swordfish password. Number 9. What is the name of your bookstore? Rebellion. Of course, because this would be an underground bookstore rebelling against the authoritarian regime. Another issue that these prompts don't cover for running an underground bookstore is, where do I get my stock of books? I think I've hinted at it in my other answers, but I would start with my own personal stock of books, because right now it's okay for them to sit in my basement and have only me read them, but in an authoritarian regime, it would be important that any of these books could be made available to someone who would want them. I would, of course, also accept donations of books, where people who do not want to be caught with books can bring them to my store, and I would loan them out to other people. That's how I think this would run. And there may be other people who would donate their books. I don't know. I know if things got that bad, I would not mind parting with my books under those circumstances, because they would get read. They would be maybe enjoyed, maybe understood, maybe even disliked. But in that case, everyone would be struggling to find books, and it would be important to have them all available to everyone. Now, my stock may not be everyone's cup of tea, which would be helpful if people did donate to my bookstore. Prompt number 10. Tag some friends. Well, this tag has been going on for a long time. I think everyone that I know has been tagged in this tag, so I'm not going to tag anyone specifically. But if you're watching this video and you feel like you want to do this tag as a regular bookstore that you would own and run as a business, or even as an underground bookstore like me, please feel free to do this tag. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.